And we are live. Welcome, guys, to another episode. Okay, so if you caught yesterday's episode, you knew we had a mic issue. So today I went ahead and got a better mic. And as you can see, guys, we've got a much improved microphone. So today we're actually, this is the volume one, the day one of us understanding how money works, right? Because I don't think that this is not something that they teach in schools. I mean, if any of you have taken the formal education in the West, and you know that this is not something that is covered in schools. They don't teach about money. They don't teach about taxes. They don't teach about debt. What do they teach you about? They teach you about how to be a loyal worker. They teach you about how to be a loyal worker. They teach you about how to um, get a job. I mean, that's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you're looking for, is if that's what you're looking for is getting a job, then that's perfectly fine. But here's what we're going to be talking about today, guys. Is I want to go ahead and start this off. We're going to be talking about what do rich people do. Okay, if you're in a ultra wealthy, high net worth individual, you're making a lot of money. You're in the you're in the income bracket of 350, 450, 500, 650, 750. What do they do with their money? I am genuinely fascinated with that. So what we're going to do, guys, let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's go ahead and dive in this. So we're going to be starting this video off with my man, Grant Cardone.
But what do they tell us to do?
Save your
Okay.
money.
So let's start this off from the top. All right, I want to go ahead and start this off from the top because he starts off some good nuggets and talking about basically what the rich people actually do with their money, because that's not something that they tell you or I. That's not something in which those are secrets that we're going to be unveiling today. Okay, so
About 12 years ago, I started studying these guys. J.P. Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the sovereign funds. These guys have trillions of dollars. The Orange County pension fund that has $20 billion under management.
Wow.
So what are they doing every day? You know,
What are they doing?
they think in terms of tremendous amounts of money, not little amounts. Okay, they don't save their money. None of it is saved. It's all invested. But what do they tell us to do?
Save your money,
man. Save your money, get invested, diversify your investments. They don't do that. So if you look at what they do, they take major positions. J.P. Morgan just bought First Republic. They're guaranteed $5 billion profit. They're protected against the first $90 billion in losses. These are inside deals, man. This is an inside game.
okay, so as we basically go ahead and start it off here is you notice something that he said something which is very crucial, which is you've heard the whole concept of saving money. Because here's the thing: I'm going to be bringing in 2 points. I'm going to bring in the point of the risky side to his approach to money, and I'm also going to be bringing in the point as to the saver side of the money, because I understand that there's different dynamics, there's different groups of people. There are people that are on the savers end, in which they want to save money. There's people that are like, you know what, I personally believe in keeping my money safe, in keeping my money in the bank, and we're going to discuss as far as why is it actually a good thing for you to keep your money in the bank? Have you actually thought about it? Like when you put your money in the bank, right? It keeps you safe. It gives you that security. What does the bank actually do? What does the bank actually do with your money? So the U.S. banking system operates of a system called the fractional reserve banking. So fractional reserve banking, most people have, there's different ways in which to explain it, but I want you guys to take a listen to this it's a very, I want to say it's a very simple explanation of how fractional reserve banking actually works. And at the end of it all, I want you to go ahead and be the judge of it. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and take a listen to this.
Banks are allowed to create money through a system called fractional reserve banking. Whenever you deposit money, the bank is legally required to keep a certain percentage of it somewhere safe, but can lend everything else. Here's an example based on a 10% reserve requirement. John goes to his bank and deposits $1,000. John's bank keeps $100 and lends the remaining $900 to Mike. There is now $1,900 in the financial system. John's $1,000 deposit and Mike's $900 loan. Next, Mike uses the $900 to buy a laptop from Karen. Then Karen deposits her $900 at another bank. The bank keeps 10% and lends the remaining $810 to George. There is now $2,710 in the system. John's $1,000 deposit, Karen's $900 deposit, and George's $810 loan. This goes on and on until John's initial $1,000 is turned into approximately $10,000. Believe it or not, commercial banks actually create more money than central banks.
Okay, so I want you guys to pay attention. I know that basically it just kind of gives it a summary and makes it sound like it's all a good thing. But think about it. Why would they tell you to save money? Okay. Now, if we're operating off of the 10% rule, basically, if they have your money, you give them 1,000 and they are able to lend your money out, they go, hey, John just came in and John just gave us $1,000, right? They go ahead and call James. So they say, hey, James, John just gave us $1,000. So, James, what we want to do right now is we want to go ahead and give you 900 of that $1,000 and you can go ahead and use it. We'll charge you a 6%, 4%, 5% interest rate on it. You go ahead and make more money off of that. So the real concept as to why you're being told to save money is because the banks cannot make money without your savings. Okay. The banks cannot make money without your savings because when you save money, the banks take that money and then they loan that money out. And basically, after loaning that money out, they're able to make more money from it. Now, most people might be, worrying about like, why did the Silicon Valley Bank collapse? I think that was made. Silicon Valley Bank collapse was basically because the banks don't have your money in there. Like the banks don't actually keep your money. When you give them the money, they go ahead and loan that money out. So in retrospect, whatever you're thinking, like, oh my God, you know what? You're looking at you log into your account, you look on your online banking and you see, $700. No, my friend, there's only $70 in there. That's only $70. If you go to the bank right now, like, let's say you put in 70 grand and you go to the bank, I want my 70 grand. They're going to be like, why? You can go deposit your money now, right now, and they're going to ask you, why do you want that money? Why? You're going to get the IRS is going to audit you. There's going to be all of this systems is going to come into play just based off of you saying, I deposit this money in or I want to take this money out. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that into play and I'm bringing that into question is I want you to think about it from a perspective as to if you've been told something for the rest of your life for the past 10, 20, 30, 40 years, why is that? Why is that? And that's basically because of the fractional reserve banking system. And the fractional reserve banking system, for it to function, it needs savers. It needs people for people like you to go ahead and save their money. And I want you guys to pretty much watch this video to Robert Kiyosaki. Robert Kiyosaki, if you guys have read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, he basically talks a little bit about money. Right now, a lot of the moves he takes are a little risky, and I don't recommend a lot of people take that. But I want you guys to go ahead and listen to this because he makes some interesting commentary. And I think it's beneficial for you and I basically to listen to. Let's go ahead and bake this. There you go. Perfect.
You pay taxes because you're working for money. Then they tell you to save money. Do you know why they tell you to save money?
I don't know.
It's the banks run the world. The rich run the world. So let's say you save $1 US or €1, 1 yen. The banking system can lend out 10. Then they tell you to save money. So they want you to save money so they can lend out your money 10 times. So your dollar became worthless 10 times over. You pay taxes because you're working.
Okay. Now, he just basically summarizes and says exactly what I just said, which is the reason why the banks want you to save money is they want you to save money because when you save money, when you save money, the banks are able to use that money to go ahead and make more money. So in a way, you kind of think about it as far as you're being used for your money. Now you're probably watching this going, well, does that mean that I should not save money? Does that mean that, saving money is not a thing I should do? You got to understand is since you were born, since before you and I were born, there was a game that was created. I want you to think about it from a perspective. There was a game that was created before you and I were born. We came into this world. We came into life. We came into this game. This game they already had top players on the game. Okay. So the way the players of the game designed the game was they designed the game for their benefit. Because imagine this. Imagine if you're the head honcho of a game and you've basically designed the game. You designed it for you to be profiting. Now, what are you profiting off of? You're profiting off of the backbone of the people that is basically, the newcomers of the game. There's a reason why most people who get into this crypto, I don't know anything about crypto. I'm going to be talking about, because most of this is I'm doing my research. Most of this, we're going to be talking about the crypto side of things as well, as far as, the dangers of crypto, if crypto is actually good or bad, but that's going to be later in a few days. But right now, I want to talk about the fractional reserve banking because most people don't understand how the money system works in America. Most people don't understand how money in itself is exchanged and how it's functional. And until you understand how money works, then it's safe to understand that you're not going to make that much money. Because if you're struggling to keep money, okay, if you're struggling to have money in your pocket, it's because you don't understand how money in itself is being used. You don't understand how money is being exchanged. You don't understand, what causes inflation. You don't understand, the ins and out of fractional reserve banking. And here's the thing: if we're having any financial experts watching this now or later on, feel free to challenge me on these topics because again, you're the experts. Okay, my whole thing is I'm just basically talking about what I'm seeing from my perspective. So I want to go ahead and kind of dive into this here and into Grant Cardone.
I know people are scared of the bubble right now. They're like, oh my God, man, things have to, real estate's too much and stocks are too much. None of this stuff has gone up equal to the amount of money printed. So if the print is this high and inflation that we're hearing about all the time is this high, you'd have to assume it would have at least this far to go. But that's only because people don't understand. When you print this much money, you need to multiply times 9. Because when money's printed, when you take your money to the bank, when I take the money that you're going to give me for this great interview today, and I take it to the bank, I put it, as soon as it goes into the bank gets notified, and the bank now has the ability to loan that money out 9 times. I know people are.
So now we're kind of living in a, most people call it an inflationary economy, right? We're living in an economy where, most people are like worried, man, is inflation gonna, how's inflation working? Like I'll give you an example. I was at the airport. So there's a pizza I usually buy, which anyone knows if you buy anything at the airport, just know it's overpriced. Okay. It's fine. We understand that. We know that. But when you go and you're paying for a slice of pizza that costs you $67, but that slice now costs you $12 to $14 for that same slice, you have to understand now, not only are you now basically paying more money for that, but you're also getting taxed more for sales taxes as well, because most people don't understand that inflation, in a way, I don't want to kind of sound like a conspiracy theorist, but inflation is also in a way a form of increasing sales taxes. Okay, inflation is a form of also increasing sales taxes. Okay, because it's a form of them, imagine if sales taxes is, 7%, 8%, 10%. Let's say, what's the average sales tax? Let's look up the average sales tax. Okay. Average sales tax in the United States is around between 4 to 7%. Okay. So if we're averaging between 4 to 7% is the average sales tax, right? So let's say I am basically, let me go ahead and share these numbers because I don't want you guys to be like, oh, Emmanuel is kind of making numbers out of his ass. I'm not. I just want you guys to kind of see the average sales tax in the United States is basically 47%, and we have average about 5.1%. Let's say even it's average of 5%. If I go to buy something that cost $100, a year or 2 years ago, and I pay 5% tax, that's what, $5. I pay $5 for it. But now that same goods now cost $200. Now I'm paying $10 in sales tax. So in a way, it's a form of also increasing the taxes as well. But also, not only is the what you call it, the fractional reserve banking system a way in which the banks can loan out more money, okay? But it's also in a way in which is you from the saver perspective, and then you're also looking at it from a lender perspective, is the banks. Most people say that they cause inflation. I don't have that much data to back it up and say, the fractional reserve banking system does actually cause inflation. But here's the thing is, I want you guys to kind of see, because there's a bunch of we're going to go ahead and read this article here, and this article is basically detailing if the fractional reserve banking does cause inflation or if it doesn't actually cause inflation, and then we're going to talk about how the banks are able to print that much money. Why? So it basically just talks a little bit about what is fractional reserve banking, and it also kind of goes into a little, just the summary of it is basically they summarize it and say that the reason why the banks are able to print that much money is because, one, the banks are not backed by gold, right? Because mostly, let me see, there's a video. There used to be base money. So what is base money? So base money used to be, back before 1971, actually even way before, a few thousand years ago, the banking system depended on the use of gold. So everyone basically traded in gold. You and I basically traded in gold, all right? Everything we did was we operated off of gold. Now, what ended up happening was in 1971, the U.S. the world relied on the U.S. The U.S. gold reserves, all right? And then they're like, you know what? We can't rely on the U.S. gold reserves anymore. Let's go ahead and take it off of the gold reserves, and now let's just rely based off of trust. Because most people, there's a video I want you to watch, because this video is going to actually explain more of what the points I'm going to drive home. And I'm going to summarize the video for you to understand the whole gold standard system and the reason why most of inflation and, everything that has to do with the fractional reserve banking system actually works, because it all pretty much ties in itself. It all ties together. So let's go ahead and kind of give this a listen here.
Almost 2,600 years ago, the first gold coins were minted and used for trade. Later on, People started storing their gold in well-guarded vaults and bought goods and services using the receipts given to them by those running the vaults. Pieces of paper they could always exchange for real gold. That's how paper money first appeared, and things evolved from there. Initially, most currencies were pegged to gold directly, as the name gold standard suggests. People could walk into a bank and exchange a piece of paper money to gold. After 1945, however, this changed. Currencies were pegged to the dollar, which was pegged to gold at a rate of $35 per ounce. Individuals were no longer allowed to exchange paper money to gold, but central banks were. However, countries such as France ended up no longer trusting the US dollar and started converting their dollars to physical gold. The gold reserves of the US were getting depleted quickly, so President Nixon stopped allowing that. He took the United States and thereby the world off anything even resembling a gold standard in 1971. At this point, the money we use isn't backed by anything tangible. Fiat currencies, as they're called, are basically backed by confidence. The dollar is backed by the confidence people have in the US.
Just imagine this, guys. Imagine this. Imagine if your money, if I tell you right now, give me $10,000 and I'm going to back it up by confidence that, whenever you come, I'll keep your $10,000 safe if I loan it out. Just imagine that. Imagine say, don't you trust me? How, even if you do trust me, there's still that element in the back of your mind that's like, dude, really? That's the same way I want you to think about it from a perspective of we're going to come back to this, but that's the same way I want you to kind of think about it from a perspective of, it used to be that the money was a note, right? It was a piece of paper. That piece of paper basically signified how much gold you had in reserve with the bank, right? So the bank would give you, I had, $1,000 worth of gold. They'll give me a paper saying that the gold I have is worth $1,000. I can break it apart and then I can go ahead and exchange that. Basically, that's backing into basically the gold reserves, right? Then they said, all right. So what that did was that basically limited the banks and said that, hey, you know what, you guys cannot loan that much money out because you cannot loan more than you have in basically in reserves. You can't do that, right? If you have 10 million in reserves, don't go ahead and loan 100 million, right? That's basically, it just basically put a stop in the system. So what ended up happening was now we came off of the gold standard, which meant the banks now are no longer tied. They're no longer tied to having to rely on gold, which means they can print as much money. The Federal Reserve can print as much money as they want, and then they say that it's all backed by confidence. Hence the reason why we're living in a very inflationary state. Now, how does this have to do with making more money? Now, the reason that this is being brought up is because for you to make more money, you have to first understand how money works. For you to understand that what you're working for, as far as let's say you're working a job and you're working for a job and you're trading your hours for dollars. You have to understand that the dollar itself is not real anymore because that note is just a piece of paper. It's a piece of paper that's backed by confidence. So basically, you're basically working for confidence. I'm not saying there's a bad thing today because guess what? The US dollar is still accepted and still respected worldwide. But if you actually factor in inflation, well, we can dive into different currencies, but the main thing is I want you to understand the concept of money is you have to think about what is more valuable. All right. And that's the reason why I want you to I want you guys to pretty much understand the basis and the basics of money. Okay. Just basic financial 101, because as the days go on, we're going to kind of dive a little bit in depth as to real estate, crypto, and we're going to dive into why people even trust more in cryptocurrency than they trust in fiat currency. Let's go ahead and finish this video. And once we finish this video, we'll go ahead and dive into my commentary. But I don't want to rush. But I was just curious as far as talking about
the British pound by people's confidence in the UK, and so
of course my internet.
The value of one currency compared to another, therefore fluctuates continuously.
So that basically summarizes and ends the video there, because the video is just basically telling you that the US dollar and any currency for the most part is not under any reserve standards. So if you have an inflation, you're like, wait, why is it that the government can print $2 trillion extra to stimulate the economy? It's because they're not really stimulating the economy. Just imagine if I have this piece of paper, right? This piece of paper is only worth what you believe it's worth. So if you believe this piece of paper is worth $1 million and I print more of this paper and I give it to you and I say, hey, give me more of your time for this piece of paper, it means nothing to me, but it means everything to you. Right. So the whole concept of money is based off of perception. Right. So basically, the entire world operates off of understanding that, you know, we trade off of the fiat currency. We don't have any gold. We're not backed by any gold. If you ask me, what do I think you should do with your money? That's honestly up to you. I'm just basically giving you the data. I give you the data. The decision that you make is completely up to you. I'm not going to tell you to buy gold. I'm not going to tell you to do anything, because my goal is not to influence your decision. My goal is to bring you the facts and bring you the information, right? So as we can basically go ahead and dive into deeper into, we understand 1971, we're taking off of, you know, off of the gold standard, right? So, you know, the US was taken off of the gold standard. Now, what is also important to understand, and what's also important to kind of take into play, is to, okay, so if money in itself, the value of it is based off of the confidence that we are putting in the banking system. Okay, we're basically being confident in the banking system, and if you have seen what's happened recently with the banks, I mean, I wouldn't really put much confidence in the banking system, but it's basically saying we're putting that much confidence in the banking system. Now, what's interesting is, now, why is it that the if you look at most businesses, most companies, they all have debt? Okay, which translates into debt, because they understand that the value of money is basically, it's a perception off of, you know, it's, we all agree as a society that the US dollar is valuable. As long as we agree on that, it's a collective agreement, then it is valuable, right? If we all agree that gold is valuable and we will accept gold, then gold is valuable, right? So why is it that the rich people, the people use debt? Now, there's two camps. Okay, and this is where we're kind of going to go ahead and separate. There's people who don't believe in debt. You listen to Dave Ramsey, and I'm actually going to play some content from Dave Ramsey. And there's people who say, you know, there's people who say debt's bad, and there's people who say debt is good. Right? Now think about it. Why do rich people use debt? Think about it from a perspective of, I want you guys to think about it from a perspective of, there's two players. All right, there's two players, and the two players that I want to go ahead and let's use a whiteboard here to kind of illustrate this. Let's see if I can find my whiteboard. Yeah, I don't have my whiteboard. Let me see. Pull it up, right? I'll pull it up on a later date. But let's say that there's two players. I'm gonna go ahead and just go on a random tab here. Okay. Let's say there's two people, right? The banks, you're the saver, right? You take your money, right? You take your $10,000, you give it to the bank, right? This is 10 grand. Let's actually do this. Let's say you give them 10K, right? Now the bank has your $10,000, right? So let me go ahead and share my screen here. So you give the bank basically $10,000, right? So you have $10,000, you've given it to the banks, right? So they have your 10,000, right? What they're gonna do is they'll keep, from what we understand from fractional reserve banking, is they'll keep 1 Gs. They'll keep 1 grand. Okay. And then they will call somebody up and say, you want 9,000? Right? Because you just saved your money, which gave somebody else with good credit, or you gave somebody else who's a preferred lender or preferred borrower, you basically gave them access to $9,000. So you got to think about it as far as, when you use debt, you have access to not just your money, you have access to other people's money, because the bank, basically, by you giving your money to the bank, you basically are volunteering and giving it to the bank and surrendering your money to the bank and allowing the bank to go ahead and lend your money out there. So why do rich people use debt? The rich people use debt because they know if they have, 300 million Americans putting in $1 trillion in there, they have access to $900 billion worth of debt. Hypothetically, right? So that means that, okay, I can now just go ahead and go to the bank and say, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and borrow this money. Let's see how much money, amount of money U.S. households have in savings. I'm very, very fascinated by these numbers. Just go ahead and put the amount of money. So basically, okay, let's see. Okay, so let's share this there. So the average American has about, the median balance for American households, they have about, like I said, I haven't verified the stats here, so I haven't reviewed the data. So let me see if I can pull this up here. I've reviewed the data, but it says about $5,300, right? That's the all right, boom. We have the U.S. personal savings. This is based off of, so this is the decline. This is the average savings statistics here. This is still because of the various average savings accounts. Data from no investor mutual to the average American's best savings. So average savings for Americans is around $65,100. Let's run based over those numbers here. So let's say someone has $65,100 in there. So which means the bank is going to basically keep $6,500, and they're going to loan roughly $59,000 or $58,500. Right, or $59,500, something like that. right? So the banks are basically going to loan $59,500 out. So why would you not want to use debt when basically just by people saving, you having access to more money? Right now, what can you use this money to do? What you use this money to do is completely up to you, because you have to show the banks that you're going to be able to pay the loan. If you're going to be able to pay the loan out, then they're like, okay, cool, that's perfectly fine. We'll go ahead and loan you the money. That's the reason why rich people use debt. They use debt because they know that when you use debt, you have access to a portfolio, you have access to more money, you have access to an inflow, you have access to an influx, you have access to a plethora of money. Right, that's what debt gives you the ability to. Now there's good debt and then there's bad debt. So when you're saying, oh my god, I don't like that, that's because you don't understand how to manage debt, right? Because most people get the credit card debts, most people get, and we're going to be covering about bad debt here in a little bit. But I want to go ahead and share this video to kind of understand how rich people use debt. Okay, how do they use debt? That's a very, very important statistic, and that's a very, very important number and important data that I want to go ahead and share with you guys here. How do rich people use debt? Let's go ahead and kind of give this a listen here.
If I borrow money, guess what? Do I pay taxes on debt?
I guess no.
Why is that? So when they lend out money, that's how money is created. Money is debt. Why is debt tax-free?
I don't know.
Because that's how money is created. And so the banks love it. They love people who borrow lots of money. So how do I get rich? I borrow money and I buy assets with it. The poor person borrows money and buys liabilities like purses, cars, houses, and they get poorer and poorer and poorer.
Okay, so this is going to bring me into this question, and I want to bring this point. So imagine this: not only is can you get debt based off of getting access to other people's money, no, also here's another thing: debt is tax free. You're not taxed. Just think about that. No taxes. So not only one, you get access to, let's say you get access to a $9,000 loan, whatever your loan is, and you pay zero taxes on it. Just pay the fees, right? Plus now you go ahead and pay interest. So think about it. And let's think about it from two sides. Let's think about it from a bank's perspective, right? So let's say a depositor puts in 10 grand and then they loan 9,000 out. So the banks now go ahead and loan 9,000 out, and they go ahead and charge a 5% interest rate on this. So not only one is, there's no taxes being taxed on this. I don't know. I'm not a banker, so I can't really dive into that. But then they're also making 5% interest off of this $9,000 loan. Right? So they're basically making more money, paying no taxes. Now, then again, we can argue this. We can talk about this. Like I said, there's more financial experts about this. They're more financially savvy. I'm just kind of like, why is this knowledge not accessible to us when we're in school? Right. So one, you're also going ahead and basically they're earning an interest off of this. Now, you, on the other hand, you're basically think about it from a perspective of you're basically a business owner, right? One, you're getting access to debt. Okay. You go ahead and loan and you go ahead and access, someone told me this. He said, rich people don't pay taxes. And I'm going to tell you why. Listen, I'm going to tell you guys why. Listen, I want to get a good angle for this. Rich people don't pay taxes. I'm going to tell you exactly why they don't pay taxes. Exactly why they don't pay taxes. Okay. And I'm not saying this because I'm saying this to show you that the system, I remember I told you guys, it's a game. They set the game and rig the game for them. So think about it from a perspective of this way. Okay. You make $1 million in income. What do? You go ahead and accrue and buy. What did he say earlier in the video? He said they buy assets. So imagine I go ahead and buy an asset. I buy a house for $1 million, or buy a property or invest in a business for $1 million. That one, I can also deduct as an expense. I'm not a tax expert, so there's a percentage as to how much you can deduct. I don't believe you can deduct everything, but I think there's a few things you have to do to qualify. But let's say you have $1 million in write-off. Let's keep it simple. You have $1 million in write-off, right? Okay, good. So that means you write it off as a loss, or write it off as whatever it is, as a business expense. So now you have $1 million that's written off, but now you also have what? You also have an asset. Let's say you have an asset, right? Which is, we're going to use the concept of, let's say a house. Now you have a house. You have an asset, right? You have an asset. This is worth $1 million. Okay, this is worth $1 million. Okay, what do? You go to the bank. You say, okay, you go over here, and then there's the bank. Okay, you go to the bank and you say, hey guys, I have $1 million in assets. I want to hedge this for a loan for $1 million. Now, technically, think about it. You already own that property. Okay, you didn't pay any taxes on it. You go to the bank and say, hey, I want a loan. The bank says, okay, fine. We'll go ahead and use that as a collateral. If you can't pay, we'll liquidate that and basically get more money from it. Now, you, my friend, somebody out there deposited, I don't know, 1 point something million, 10 million, whatever it is. The bank now take ownership of this, so use it as a collateral, and then they give you 1 million. So now you have your $1 million that you had before at zero taxes. Because remember, we said this, debt is not taxed. There is no taxes when it comes to debt. Okay. So now you have your $1 million that has now gone into the bank. Okay. Your $1 million asset that you bought, you put it in the bank. The bank basically now gives you $1 million that is now no taxes. And then they're charging you, a 0.01% interest, just hypothetical, right? Versus if you had not bought that asset and you kept the $1 million and you saved it, basically now depends on whatever your tax bracket is, you'll be paying roughly $370,000 in taxes. So think about it from this way: no taxes, plus you have an asset worth $1 million, and then the banks basically give you more money to go ahead and keep playing the game. Do you understand? Now you see how when we talk about the game is rigged, the game is rigged. So you have to understand how the game is rigged. You have to understand how you can go ahead and use the game in your benefits. Now, this is not a sexy topic. This is not a topic that's meant for everybody. If only 1 or 2 people actually get a message from this, that's perfectly fine, because once you understand how money works, it's going to impact how you actually operate on a day-to-day basis. Is going to operate off of, do you want to keep money in savings, or do you want to use and leverage debt? Okay, there's good debt and there's bad debt. Okay, and you have to understand, a bad debt is, if you think about it, if I buy a car, the moment I drive off the lot, the car is useless. I define good debt as a debt in which it holds its value. So what that means is, if I buy a property worth $1 million or $2 million, if it still holds its value to the bank, that's good debt. Because guess what? Now I'm planning to hopefully go to the bank and say, hey, I have this much, this much in equity and this much in asset. I want to leverage that and borrow against it, and then they give me the money from it. But if it's a bad debt where you're like, hey, I spent $500,000, or I bought this purse, I bought this watch, I go to the bank, they're like, wait, this is useless to us. Because a bad debt is a debt that the banks are not on your side, because you want the banks on your side. You want the banks hanging out with you. You want the banks chilling with you. You don't want the banks to be like against you. So a good debt is a debt in which you can go ahead and leverage against, with the banks. That's the reason why people pick real estate, because one, the government is on your side, and the banks on your side as well when you go ahead and dive into the real estate portfolio, real estate side of things, right? So as we talk about this, is you have to think about it also. There's another way, which is I want to talk about, and Grant Cardone makes a commentary on this, is to how rich people how big companies are leveraging debt. Okay, now we're going to argue 2 camps. We're going to argue the camps as to why debt's good, and we're also going to camps as to why debt's bad, because I don't believe a lot of people should be getting into debt, especially depends on where you are at. But let's go ahead and kind of share this out. Let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Apple has debt, Google has debt, Facebook has debt, and they have cash reserves that are the biggest on planet Earth. They could pay cash for everything.
Why do they do that?
Apple just did this. I want to make a $90 billion purchase. And they're like, yeah, we got the cash for that, plus another 50%. We got plenty of cash to do this. And then one of their people says, okay, bro, you do that? That is not a tax deductible. We should go keep this and go borrow $90 billion. They're going to pay a half of 1%. So now they have the best of both worlds. They have their cash and they have debt.
It's so cheap now.
Because we print money. Money is not scarce. Apple has debt.
Okay,
Google has debt.
You see it. So you guys, are you guys understanding here what you understand what it's preaching? So think about it from a perspective of, and this is where I don't believe in spending. If you're going to spend your reserve cash, try to see if you can actually use and liquidate and actually use debt in purchases that you're going to get a financial return from. Now, if you're going to go on vacation, I don't recommend you use debt on vacation, because I personally think if you're using debt on vacation, there's no financial incentive from it. It's just like, that's why credit card, for instance, right? Most people spend on credit cards, and most credit card purchases are, what's the word? It's just to make you feel good. It's a feel good purchase. It's not most of it's not financially. There's no financial return. There's no incentive. There's no benefit. It's just oh yeah, I feel good because I spent this much money on a vacation. Now, which kind of brings me and segues into the next part of this, which is the American debt, credit card debt. The American as a whole, the debt problem that's going on in the country as far as the credit card expenses and how much money people are actually spending on credit cards, which kind of brings me into, there we go, that's where we are.
The Fed raised interest rates again this week, the 9th time since last March. The rate hike will have an immediate impact on the 1 in 3 Americans who carry credit card debt. There are ways to lessen the blow, though. CBS's Tanya Rivero is in New York with what you need to know.
Americans have never held more credit card debt than they do right now, almost $1 trillion total, an increase of nearly 19% over the end of last year. And now, with the Fed's 9th interest rate hike in a row to 5%,
inflation remains too high and the labor market continues to be very tight.
Many Americans will see an almost immediate increase to their credit cards' interest rates.
When the Fed raises interest rates, it really kicks in quickly, and that interest rate hike applies to currently held balances as well as future balances.
Your card's rate is not totally tied to the Fed's actions. Your credit score has a lot to do with it. Here are tips.
So I don't want to bore you. I don't want to bore you because now we're going to start diving into tips. But the main thing is the main thing there is the credit card. Obviously, 986 billion. Okay, that's how much money that is being held in credit card debts. Billion. That's what a B. That's 9 zeros attached to it. And we're going to go ahead and dive into some more stats here, guys, because as you guys know, I like to look at the stats. I like to look at the numbers. I like to share those numbers with you guys because at the end of the day is, if I can say, 1 + 1 is 2, but if you don't look at the data with me, then is it really 2? So you see that Americans have an absolute, this is from Lending Tree. You can find this on Lending Tree. So Americans have an absolute amount of credit card debt of 986 billion to be exact. Okay. So 986 billion. So the credit card debt has been rising. It fell for a little bit during COVID, during the pandemic, right here in Q4, Q1. The reason why it fell right here during the pandemic in 2021 was because this is where the stimulus money came, right? This is where a lot of people got the stimulus. When the stimulus money came, most people went ahead and used that money to pay off credit cards. So they paid off credit cards, and then there was no more stimulus money. And then guess what? There's a hike again in the credit card bills, because now, as you can see, Uncle Sam is not coming in to back us up. And if Uncle Sam's not coming to back you up, then what else is there to do, right? So which is something we're going to keep that there. We're going to keep that there on the screen because I want to go ahead and share those numbers with you, because the fact of the matter and the truth of the matter is people have a spending problem. Okay, they have a habit problem. They have a problem of how much, how they go ahead and use expenses. Now, this is just going to go into a breakdown of the U.S. balances by state. That's not really what I wanted the consensus of this presentation. I don't want to kind of go ahead into that. And it's going to talk about a little bit of the interest rates, but that's not also what I want to go ahead and dive into, right? So now, in the census too, it's credit card debt. Is that a debt in which you want to use, if you are, starting out? Is that a debt at all that you want at all? So I want you guys to see this. So the average, this is basically using 21 data to see how much is increasing. The average American had $5,525 in credit card debt in 2021. Okay, and this is in 2021. This is 2021 data. So it had about $5,525 in credit card debt in 2021. So credit card debt is basically the second largest debt behind mortgage debt. Now, the thing about mortgage debt is the mortgage debt is a debt in which you're in the debt with the bank, right? Mortgage debt is a debt in which, with mortgage debt, you can actually, I would say, some people say it's good debt, some people say it's bad debt. It all depends on how you use it. It honestly all depends on how you use it. I have questionable views on a mortgage debt, but you guys stay ahead and pay attention to the next live. And in the next live, I'm going to go ahead and cover mortgage debt. Okay, so basically, it talks about countries that have the most debt and which one has the least debt. And Gen X, which I believe came after millennials, has the largest amount of credit card debt, ranging at 7,236, which is basically based off of 2021 data. This is 2021 data, which means that was after they actually received the stimulus. That stimulus money. Okay, so we're going to kind of go ahead and dive into this. That's just basically a breakdown, but this is a commentary, and Mark Cuban basically makes a commentary on credit cards. Okay, he basically makes a commentary on credit cards. Let me see if I can find this here. Looks like I lost it here. Let me see if I can find that. Okay, I think that's the one.
If you use your credit cards, you do not want to be rich.
Well, anytime you say something about debt, people send it to me. Look
Right,
what Cuban,
I know.
look
I
what Cuban
say
said.
tweets, yeah.
Look at what Cuban
And
said.
vice versa.
Yeah, so cut up your credit cards. If you use a credit card, you don't want to be rich.
Yep,
I like
my
that line. That's a good line.
That's my favorite line. I tell it people all the time. People then they ask me, well, where's the best place to invest? I said, your best place to invest is to pay off all your credit cards and burn them, because your credit card, you know what your return is, right? If you get off, you're paying 15, 20% interest. If you pay that down, you just earn 15 or 20%.
Folks, I've told you 100 times, and Forbes 400 wealthiest people in North America, when surveyed, asked what's the way to build wealth, what's the number one way to build wealth. 75% of wealthy people, not your broke brother-in-law with an opinion, but wealthy people say, get out of debt and stay out of debt.
Yep.
Because it gives you power over your largest wealth building tool, which is your income.
If you use your credit.
Okay. Now, you notice there. You notice where he said, get out of debt. He's like, okay, don't get in debt. Don't get in, don't use that. I'm not gonna speak about the Dave Ramsey card, because I don't want to get into, the whole debate. I don't want to also talk about the Grant Cardone, but I've presented enough data for right now that I want you guys to make your own decisions and your own judgments as far as what do you think? Okay. What do you think? If you know that the banks you have access to more money when you use debt than when you don't. But also, what are you using that debt for? Are you using that debt to invest and purchase things that are actually going to return? Basically, if your debt, it's whatever debt you're purchasing. If like, for instance, the reason why I don't agree with the mortgage debt, and this is where, like, I guess I'm going to piss off a lot of people, is I personally believe that whatever debt you get, you need to be earning at least whatever the interest rate is that you're paying on it, or more than your interest rate you're paying on it. That debt has to be generating that much income. What does that mean? That means if I get a house for $400,000 and I'm paying a 3 to 4, or maybe even a 6% interest rate, then that means that in some way, shape, or form, I should be using that house to generate at least a 6% extra increase income to be able to offset, and basically that debt basically pays for itself. Now, my big believer in this is, if you go ahead and play Monopoly, right? Basically 4 houses and you have a hotel, right? The 4 houses and you have a hotel in Monopoly basically says this is where I operate off the principle is, this is your first 4 houses you purchase should be houses that you rent out. Right? You need renters, right? So let's say you have a house, you have a house for $1,500. You have another house for $1,500. Now that's $1,500, right? And that's basically your average, $1,500 there. And let's say that's how much the mortgage is costing you for each house, so which means you're laying on a ground layer on 4 doors. You're laying on a ground layer of $6,000, right? So that means that you need to be at least charging in more than that to be able to pay off whatever it is that your mortgage. Let's say you're charging $1,900 to the renters, or $2,000 or $2,100. Let's say you're even charging $2,100, which means on each door you're making an extra $600. So 600 times 4, you're making it $2,400. Let's say nothing goes wrong. You don't have anything to fix. You don't have any property management. You're managing it yourself. You have $2,400. Now what you do is you go ahead and get to a house where you can afford at least a mortgage payment of at least $1,500. I don't recommend going for the whole thing, because in case something happens, $1,500. Now you're like, where do you get the $1,500 from? If I'm making an extra net profit from my rental units of $2,400, now whatever my house that I'm living in, which is going to be the hotel, is being paid for by all my rental units. Right. That's why I'm a big believer is to don't buy your first home. I believe you buy your first 4 homes, you rent out your first 4 homes. After you rent out your first 4 homes, whatever net cash flow you have from that, you use that cash flow to basically purchase, something within the mortgage payments that you can pay for with the net positive cash flow from your rental units. Now, does it take work? Yes, it does. But that's basically my recommendation, because a lot of people go ahead and purchase a house. And if you purchase a house, you're still having to use your earned income to go ahead and pay for that. Now, like I said, finance is not really a sexy topic. I'm not in finance. I was in finance. I'm not giving anyone financial advice. So this is not financial advice. This is basically you making a decision for yourself. I have no interest in telling you what to buy, what to not buy. That's basically something you can do, and that's a decision that you can make on your own. I believe that you guys watching me are basically you educated adults, and as an educated adult, I assume that you can basically go ahead and make your own informed decision. But we don't stop there with Mark Cuban, because Mark Cuban also makes some commentary that I want to kind of go ahead and talk about. He makes some commentary here, which is very interesting.
How do I describe you? I was saying,
let's see here. So this is.
I think if everybody has that opportunity to go for it, they just got to do it.
Well, a lot of people say it's hard to get a loan right now if you're a small business owner, or you're trying to come up with an idea. How do you get the capital to start that business?
Well, first of all, if you're starting a business and you take out a loan, you're a moron. right? Because there's so many uncertainties involved with starting a business, yet the one certainty that you'll have to have is paying back your loan. And the bank doesn't care about your business, or whoever you borrow from, unless it's family, doesn't care about your business, and so it's just a complete conflict. So
okay. Now, the reason why I'm bringing that up is this. I'm bringing it up because a lot of people thinking, okay, man, you said this. I want to get access to that money. I want that debt. Let's go ahead and get a good credit score and go invest. Listen, if you're going to go ahead and start a business, I do not recommend. I will tell you this. I will straight up tell you this. Do not start a business on debt. Do not take a loan out to start a business. Work extra at your job. Make the difference, and basically based off the difference, the spread that you make, you can use the spread. You can go ahead and use that difference to go ahead and over time invest and learn in the skill sets. Then you go ahead and start a business. But I don't recommend you use a loan because again, this business is very volatile. It's very unpredictable, right? And the reason why I'm saying that is basically I'm telling that there's good sides to debt as to we understood when we started with the fractional reserve banking, and we understood how the banks basically create money and how basically money is created from thin air, and how basically more money is being created by the fractional reserve banking than actually the federal, by commercial banks, which are local banks. How the commercial banks create more money than the Federal Reserve, because the fractional reserve banking, the Federal Reserve basically, let's say they print out $2 trillion, right? And then we all take that $2 trillion and save it. Now they get access to it and they go ahead and loan it out. They're creating more money, more income has been created based off of the lending. That's what basically stimulates the economy. So Federal Reserve banking, the fractional reserve banking is good, but in a sense, as to business, should you go start your business with debt? I don't recommend you do that. There are people who do. There are people who succeed from it. And there's a study here. There's a story that basically there's a story of a guy who basically started a business. He used credit cards to start his business, and he actually succeeded from it. At least from this. Basically, this is an article by The Street, and I want to kind of go ahead and let's go ahead and dive into this article here. And here it basically starts out with a story. Basically, he was unable to raise money during 2007 because most of you understand 2007, 2008 was when we had that, the financial crisis in the States. So he basically bootstrapped his company with 3 credit cards. Even Alex Hormozi, I'm going to see if I can even find a story after this. I'm going to cover a story of Alex Hormozi credit card story. He had a where he had to put money on his credit cards. I'm going to see if I can find that story. Yeah, I don't think that's going to take a little bit of digging. I'm going to dig that, find that down. But this guy basically, he used his credit card. A little over a year later, he had maxed them out and did not make a dent in paying down the 50,000 balance in 2011 until he acquired his first customer. Okay, his first customer in 2011, $50,000. 2011. So which means he started in 2007. He got his first customer 4 years later. That's the unpredictability of using debt. That's the reason why I don't recommend you use credit card debt, because then again, you're going back into the system again, right? But you have to understand that you need to get to an echelon where you have cash flowing things to invest in. That's when debt actually comes in and plays a big role. Invest in things in which you are protected and backed by the government and also by the banks, right? So basically, he launched his company, and when he launched his company, it narrows down how he kind of has a success story and is basically and is wealthy, made some money from it, and all that good stuff. You can go ahead and find the story. This is basically a dstreet.com. You can find the story, but that's a guy that basically used credit card and he succeeded from it. So that's just basically to show you that you can actually succeed from using credit cards. But there's also businesses out there that basically took out loans, but those businesses did not make it. Those businesses did not make it when they took out loans. Those businesses, they struggled. And this is basically a statistic data on businesses that filed for bankruptcy between the year 2000 to year 2022. And if you notice this, that between the peak year, the year of 2007 and 2010, you had a peak bankruptcy filed because this was during the financial crisis, and then it kind of dwindled down. We had about 60,000 businesses as of 2010, 60,000 to now you're looking at about 13,125, right? Because people got smarter, but that's because investors also got smarter as well. So you don't want to end up on the list of businesses that are still in that position where you're filing for bankruptcy. That's not something you want to be in, because that stays on your credit for roughly about 7 years. So you don't want to be in that position in which you're having to file for bankruptcy in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so but now let's kind of peel a layer back. All right, let's peel back a layer and let's talk about a little bit about Who else is user debt? What kind of debt out there? Because most people are like, okay, you know what? All right, we know now we can't use credit card debt because even if we can't use credit card debt to even start a business. But what about if you say I want to use credit card to basically learn? Okay, I want to go ahead and use credit cards to basically learn. I want to go to school. I want to go ahead and I want to take a student loan out. I want to go ahead and get some more money. I want to use that to further my education, right? So now what I want to do is I want to go ahead and share with you this guys a statistic, and this is a stat. This is a data stat on the student loan. This is a student loan. Let me see if I can go ahead and share. Actually, let's do this. Let me put myself right here. Let's go ahead and do the student loan stat. So basically, the student loan debt in the United States is actually almost double the credit card debt, because we know that the credit card debt was sitting at roughly about 986 billion. Okay, 86 billion was the average credit card debt, and now we have the student loan sitting at 1.74 trillion. Okay, so we're sitting at 1.74 trillion, which means there are more people who have tried to invest more in student loans than they actually have get debt for student loans that they have actually for credit cards. Now, here's the thing: is you're thinking about, and this is also puzzled me, how an 18-year-old with no track record goes to the bank and say, "Hey, listen, I want $100,000, and I want $100,000 to go ahead and invest in this degree. I want to invest in that degree." And the bank is like, "Oh, okay, sure, we'll give you 100 grand in that degree, whatever degree you want to do. Yeah, absolutely. Here's $100,000." Now, the reason why they're able to do that is because they are protected by the government. Okay, the government actually, think about it in census too. The government actually protects them if they do that. If they go ahead and give that money out, if they go ahead and loan that money out, they're actually insured. And I won't say insured, but in a way, they're actually protected by the government. That's the reason why they go ahead and loan out as much money as they go ahead and loan out. So if we come back here to this data, this statistic here, so 43.6 million borrowers have a federal student loan. The average federal student loan debt is about 37,000, and private loans about 40,000. And less than 2% of private student loans enter default as of 2021. The average public university student borrows about 25,000. So basically, this is just showing you the historic student loan data as far as how much debt has climbed over since 2022. It's about 1.76 trillion as of 2022. Right. And this is just basically the quarterly statistics. Now, what is interesting is we can go ahead and navigate through the stats and navigate through the statistics, but most people get student loans and go into degrees that they don't really care about, because they don't really think much about it, because they're just like, I want a degree. Then they go ahead and get a degree. Then they come out, and then after they get a degree, and then they're like, hey, we need 3 years experience. We need a bachelor's. You're like, dude, I just got out. Now you got to go ahead and get more schooling. Now that means more debt. So now you come out with $70,000, $80,000 worth of debt in student loans that you can't pay off, because your starting salary is not enough to meet your minimum payment. Right. So now people start defaulting in your loans. Right. So then again, now you're kind of looking at it from statistics as far as, okay, now how do I play the game better? Because I know that if I use credit cards to start a business, there's a problem. If I use the student loans, then there's another problem, right? So how exactly am I playing this money game? How do I win at this money game? How you win at the money game is very important. You need to focus on three things. Right? I'm going to go ahead and share a few stats here, and I'm going to share with you guys what those three things are that you should focus on, okay? And what I want to go ahead and focus on right now is I want you guys to think about it from a perspective as to who is the winner? Who's the winner when it comes to student loan debt? Who's the winner? Who's the winner? Who do you think is the winner? Okay, let's look at how much 10 national universities with the biggest endowments. Endowments is how much cash they have in reserve. Okay, with the biggest endowments. Let's look at it from a perspective of which one has the biggest endowments. Okay, so we're looking at the college endowments, and this is tax and exempt. So which means this is non-tax. They can keep it non-tax. Okay, so we have it right here as Harvard having $53.2 billion non-tax money that they have reserved in endowments. Okay. We have Yale has $42.3 billion. Stanford has $37.8 billion. Princeton has $37 billion. Massachusetts, MIT has $27.4 billion. University of Philadelphia has $20.5 billion. University of Notre Dame, $18.4 billion. Texas A&M has $16.9 billion. University of Michigan has $16.8 billion. Washington University has $13.7 billion in endowments. Okay, so you have to understand something is when you are playing, there's two games you have to understand, right? When you're playing when you're playing the credit card and you're playing the mortgage, you're playing with the bank. You're playing the bank's game. When you're playing the student loan debt, you're playing the bank's game. But not only are you just playing the bank's game, you're playing also the college's game. Okay, they win at this. They win. So regardless, you have to, whichever angle you go at, I'm going to tell you, whichever angle you go at, it's all a rigged system. But even though it's all a rigged system, how do you actually maneuver and find a sweet spot that you actually come out, successful. You find a sweet spot where you actually come out, a winner. You have a sweet spot where you're not taking advantage of. It's simple. You focus on 3 things. The 3 things I say focus on is you focus on basically your habits, your mindset, and your skill sets. Habits, mindset, and your skill set. Okay. So habits are what you do on a day-to-day basis. You got to have habits. Very important. Okay. Your mindset is how do you approach money? And we're going to talk about this is going to be pretty much towards the tail end. I'm going to talk about the mindset that you need to have, but that's not going to be covered in this live. So you gotta tune in daily. And then you have the skill sets. You need to focus on skill sets that make money. I'm not saying you should not go get student loans. I'm actually an advocate for if you are actually going to go play the bank scheme, play the game. But play the game in which you know that at the tail end of it, you come out a winner. You want the schooling on your system. If you go to college and you're like, hey, I'm going to go be a doctor, I'm going to go be a pilot, I'm going to go be something in which I'm getting a student loan, and I know when I come out, I will have a return on my investments, is a much more easier and better lucrative reason why you should go ahead and get a student loan, as opposed to being that individual that's like, I'm going to go get a student loan for a degree that I'm not going to use. Because most people, a huge percentage of people, I don't know what the data on the numbers are, but a huge percentage of people have, at least 20 to 30% of people, I'm guessing, have degrees that and are working a job that are not related to the degree, right? They're not related to the degree. Let me see if I can find these numbers, this data for you guys here as to percentage of people who are working a job in a degree, working a job not related to the degree. Okay, so you can understand the game. So I was right, 21%. 21%. I actually was right. Look at that. Look at that. Even when I'm not trying to be right, I'm right. So 21% of people are working jobs that are not in any way full-time or part-time that are related to your degree. So think about it. 21% of those people have a grant, and that's 21%. Let's say that's 21% of 100 million. That's 20 million people. And if they all have an $80,000 student loan, think about that. That's an insane amount. That's a few $billion. So just think about it from that perspective. I want you guys to think about it from that perspective there. As far as if you want to be getting a degree, if you want to be getting something, then you have to be in a field that you're getting, you're interested in. Don't just rack up debt for the purpose of racking up debt. So that's the step first. This is the day one, guys. So go ahead. This is day one of a 10-part series. I'm talking about how the rich people basically use money, how you can leverage money. And I'm going to share with you guys the systems, and we're going to be diving in it together. We studied fractional reserve banking today, and tomorrow, I believe tomorrow's topic is going to be, we'll be covering real estate, credit, offshore banking, high frequency trading, mortgage lending, cryptocurrency, wealth management, and we were talking about some, other wealth accumulation services that are out there as well. So go ahead, guys, make sure to stay tuned. Make sure to set your notifications for whenever I go live, because like I said, for the next 10 days, we're going to be talking money. We're talking money. We're going to dissect what makes money work. It's a pleasure having everyone that was live with me today, guys. You guys have a blessed and awesome. Oh yeah, it's Wednesday, and that's what I